Hey everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your moon in Scorpio and Venus in Cancer. I've begun a series with this combination of the moon and Venus because I wanted to really hone in on relationship or love types of attitudes and maybe behaviors because these two planets really exemplify how a person acts when they are in relationship. And I'm primarily going to talk about it in terms of romantic relationships. Obviously, there are the parent and child relationship or friendships. There's so many different types of relationships, but I really want to kind of concentrate on that combination because I think that it is particularly important for us to look at that because these are both water signs, and this means that the person has a very uh, emotional, that's kind of a generic word, but their their love life is deeply emotional. You might say, well, duh, it's their love life. Of course it's going to be emotional, but that's not necessarily the case. If somebody has their moon in Aquarius, and let's say they have Venus in Sagittarius, they may be very, when they're connected to someone, there can be this air of detachment. Not everybody has the same attitude towards love and the same behavior in love. So we have to be very careful about assuming that the way that we see relationship or love or the emotions that we exhibit when we are in that situation is going to be true across the board. It's not. And, the perfect example, speaking of the moon in Scorpio, is if that person gets together with somebody that maybe they have the moon in Aquarius, like I was talking about, and they can have radically different views about what it means to love. For the moon in Aquarius person, probably the greatest act of love that they can show another person is not being possessive, is not being jealous, is giving that person freedom. And the moon in Scorpio person, that is completely foreign to where they're coming from. So let's talk about what the moon is all about. The moon is our emotional nature. So it's how we express feelings. It's how we, our attitude towards emotions themselves. Referencing the moon in Aquarius, a person with the moon in Aquarius, unless, let's say, they have the sun in a water sign, then they may be more receptive to emotions. But in general, somebody with the moon in Aquarius is really going to recoil at people who have strong emotions, even if they're strongly positive, even if they're with somebody who says that they're madly in love with them. Somebody with the moon in Aquarius, that can make them feel very uncomfortable. But somebody with the moon in Scorpio is fearless when it comes to emotions because they're coming from this very this is a cliche, but intense perspective when it comes to love and life itself. And so they don't flinch at other people's dark emotions or, unpleasant emotions. They are actually, it's almost like having a built-in therapist. When you are with somebody who has the moon in Scorpio, they're going to be able to handle people whose emotions are not that bright and shiny, who maybe are more complicated. I actually think that having the moon in Scorpio is the most difficult moon to have. I have, the funny thing is, my um, most, it's not really something you would view, it's something you listen to. My greatest number of hits comes from my Moon in Scorpio video, which I actually did over again because I got some complaints about it the first time, because I think people thought I was being too hard on people with the Moon in Scorpio. And so, that was a rare occasion, but I realized that they were right, and I scrapped it and I did it over again. And I do feel that people with the Moon in Scorpio have a big challenge when it comes to their life as a whole, because of their emotional nature, and also probably because they have been through the ringer in life. And if there are any of you out there who wish to refute that, I would love to hear about it. But that's just been my feeling about people with this moon sign. I have the moon in conjunction with Pluto. It is in Virgo, but still. So I really feel that I'm an honorary moon in Scorpio individual myself. And one of the things that is really, and doing these types of videos has really hit home what it must be like to have the moon in Scorpio. And the thing about it is that you are super duper perceptive. I think that's one of the biggest problems that exists, is that you are so perceptive, because that's another thing about the moon. The moon is your intuitive faculties. So somebody with the moon in Scorpio is like very tuned into the undercurrents in any environment, not just what's on the surface, but the undercurrents. And it can make things incredibly tense, because you feel what is not being said, what is not being acknowledged by other people in an environment. And yet, at the same time, it's not unusual for people with the moon in Scorpio maybe to either project their own shadow onto other people, or to overdo it in terms of their sensing these situations. Because I know for my own self that I have done this, and it can be very frustrating, because I don't want to read into things that aren't there, but sometimes it's like having some kind of a machine, if that's what you want to call your emotional nature, that sometimes glitches a little bit and overdoes it. And that's part of that emotional intensity that you're bringing to every situation. Scorpio is a fixed water sign, so emotionally, if you feel like you have been done wrong, it's very hard for you to forgive. Especially if that other person hasn't acknowledged that they've done anything wrong, and that they haven't made amends or anything, or karma hasn't, the karma fairy hasn't paid them a visit yet, you can feel like something is really wrong. And the lower nature, the lower vibration of Scorpio as a whole is vengefulness. And so a person with the moon in Scorpio who is not well developed, can take it upon themselves sometimes to try to right those wrongs in whatever way they see fit. This is not going to be true of every Moon and Scorpio individual. I want to make that very clear. But there are some people that are motivated to do what they do because they feel as if, I think really some of it has to do with empowering themselves. This is one of the themes of Scorpio because, especially because of Pluto. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto and Mars, and I think Pluto, because it is connected to power, a person who has a prominent Scorpio, which the moon certainly is a prominent position, can feel as if when they are betrayed, when they are cheated, or, I'm talking about, obviously, betrayal, we usually think of being cheated on, but I'm talking about being cheated like in a business deal or something like that. And there are no seeming reverberations that make that other person have to pay a price for what they've done. That's that Moon in Scorpio person, or you could say the sun in Scorpio, maybe Mars in Scorpio. That person's like, what? That's not how life works. There's cause and effect in the universe. What's going on here? So, this is not something that a Scorpio person, even that of a lower nature, will necessarily do willy-nilly. There will likely be at least in their eyes, a good reason why they're doing what they're doing. But the problem is, first of all, it doesn't solve anything. But the other thing is, some people are very easily offended, and just about anything can be a cause for them to feel like they have to tip the scales in the other direction and do something to balance it out. So chances are, if you're listening to this, you are of a higher vibration and you wouldn't do that. As a matter of fact, the higher vibration of Scorpio is very noble as far as I'm concerned, because they have personal power, so they have no need to go outside. And they know that karma exists, not, punishment per se, but cause and effect. Just like gravity, nothing personal, nothing vengeful, just good old-fashioned sowing what you've reaped. Another thing that we can say about the moon is that it's how a person feels safe. And this is where the secretive qualities of Scorpio really kick in, because I always say, and people usually agree with me who have their Scorpio, because they know damn well probably that they do this, where there's a withholding. When somebody has Scorpio rising, and I actually had somebody make a comment to me, I think for Scorpio rising, and they said, the reason that we do this isn't because we're trying to be secretive, it's because nobody is owed our business, or our, whatever, our feelings or whatever. I forgot what position it was in, but they were saying that they don't owe anybody that. And I understand that. But the thing is that I feel that there is like a retentive, withholding quality with Scorpio. And I find this so much. It's really funny. Like, even when I'm doing private readings, sometimes I'll have someone and they don't give me much information, which is, I'm not asking for a ton of information, but I just get this vibe And when I pull up their chart, I'm like, yep, they have like Scorpio rising, or maybe they have Mercury in Scorpio. They have some kind of major planet in Scorpio, inner planet or inner point. And the reason I believe that this happens, and what I have read also kind of goes along with that, is this idea of information being a weapon. So it's true that sometimes when we share details about our life with certain people, some people exploit that. And they do so because they're coming from, usually we're talking about like narcissists, people like that, because they are not really interested in us. They are interested in gaining control. And so the more that they can find out about another person, the more they can figure out how to screw them over, is really what it's about. And they call that hoovering in the narcissistic abuse community, where the person, it's like sucking up like a vacuum, sucking up information that they can kind of use later on, or that's how they plot what they're going to do, because they don't have real relationships with people. So it's possible that people, maybe you, if you're listening, that you have been the victim of narcissistic abuse. This might have been a parent or some other adult that was prominent in your life. And what happens, and that sets the stage early on to experience it as an adult, or to fear experiencing it as an adult. But I think probably people with the moon in Scorpio find that these difficult relationships may show up in their life in multiple forms. Maybe bosses, if it's not a parent. If the person's an adult and they had a narcissistic parent, you can have a boss that's very controlling and that is manipulative and trying to get inside your head and things like that. So there's like this. I think people in general have a self-protective type of impulse within themselves, but Scorpio has perfected it into a life, an art form. But anyway, Scorpio is a sign that really worships power. Maybe worship is too strong a word, but that you're very attracted to it. I'm saying Scorpio almost like, your sun in Scorpio, but anybody who has a prominent Scorpio, sun, moon, or rising, is going to embody these qualities in a very strong way. So the person with Scorpio moon sign may feel that if they are emotionally vulnerable, that is a sign of weakness. So they may do whatever they can to not show that when they are hurt. But you can tell when a person with the moon in Scorpio is hurt, because they are or have been hurt in the past because of the suspicious nature that this individual will tend to have. One of your worst nightmares is somebody cheating on you or abandoning you, because emotionally you feel things so strongly. There's such an extreme quality of the sign of Scorpio. Because this is in the moon position especially, you tend to have very strong feelings, black and white feelings. It can be very hard for you to be neutral about someone. you can either love someone or hate them. Now, obviously, this is a generalization, and if let's say you have your sun in Gemini, for instance, that's going to make you more flexible, and you may not be that intense ultimately about other people. You may have more tolerance than that, especially since Gemini is an air sign, but it's also a mutable sign. But just taking it in terms of the sign of Scorpio itself, that's how you can be. And so this also goes along with the idea of forgiveness. It's because Scorpio is a fixed sign, you can have very rigid ideas of what is right and what is wrong, and your feelings are colored by that. And so you may be like, hey, that person shouldn't have done that. That was wrong that they cheated on me. And no matter what the reason that they give, it's not going to be suitable. But even if somebody hasn't cheated, if you're in a relationship with somebody, you may test them emotionally to see if they are really loyal. And when we bring in Venus and Cancer, we're talking about somebody who is very nurturing, very protective of others. So it's both that is going on, where you are protective of yourself, but you're also protective of your loved one. And almost in a what we would call like a maternal way. And it has nothing to do with what gender you are. You could be a man and you could be doting over your significant other, worried that they're hungry, worried that they're not dressed warmly enough. And that is how you show that you care, by mothering your romantic partner. But I do believe that you expect in return this devotion from that person. And if you don't get it, or it's not enough for you, then you can feel as if you're missing something, that you're not getting what you need. And it can also, if you come from a background of loss, like which I do feel that people who are water signs, they may have death of a loved one as something that they dealt with as a trauma growing up, maybe a parent or a sibling, something like that, someone, or if it was a beloved grandparent, that really triggers loss in an acute way for you. And it's kind of like maybe even like a phobia, that you're afraid. That's why I said abandonment. Death can be perceived as abandonment to children because they don't understand exactly what it means. And so all they can do is to look at themselves and like think, I did something wrong to cause this. So that might be something that if somebody were to say that to you just in a straightforward way, you'd probably laugh them in the face. But it might be lurking beneath the surface, that's where that is coming from, and that's what's motivating you. Some kind of trauma involving the loss of a person. Now, it doesn't have to be death. It might be, a parent who walked out and abandoned the family. And I was going to say a father, but I was reading this story where a real life situation where there's a couple of autobiographies that I read where the mother walked out on her family. And in both cases, these women became drug addicts, bad drug addicts, and I believe it's because of that trauma. So the point is that, these kinds of things happen and people cope in different ways. Some people escape through substance abuse, but some people, they become very, like addicted to relationships or very needy in relationships. And this is where Cancer, Venus in Cancer, can indicate somebody who is very attached emotionally to another person. And so when you have this combination, you have to be very careful about the demands, the emotional demands that you place on another person, because that can lead to that person feeling smothered emotionally. And you may not have that intention, but that is what the bottom line is what actually occurs. And another thing that I think is an unfortunate assumption by somebody who has the moon in Scorpio in particular is that you may believe when you're in a relationship that it's almost like that other person belongs to you. And, typically I would say that about the opposite sign of Taurus to Scorpio, because they are known as being possessive. With Scorpio, it's a little bit different because Taurus is an earth sign, so there's like that tangibility factor where Taurus, rules the second house of earned income, and it's like money you can hold in your hands. Or if you're talking about your possessions, that is the second house as well. So people become a Taurus person's possessions. With Scorpio, it's more like, because I'm feeling something, therefore another person is supposed to, I don't know, stay with me forever. And that's just the end of it. There's not this sense of like, hey, sometimes people change and it's okay to end a relationship and feel like you need to move on. But with somebody who has the moon in Scorpio, it's like, no, you made this commitment. We got married, or we said we loved each other, and why are you saying that you don't want to be in this relationship anymore? It's like, no, that's not how it works. And I've actually read comments under some of my videos that were about Scorpio. I can't remember which ones, but people kind of state these things, or just in general, I would say, maybe it wasn't my videos, maybe it was just in society, people think that, oh, well, once you get married, then that's it. Well, no, it's not it. You can't, there are no guarantees in life. But see, that's the thing. The person who is a fixed sign for their moon sign, who is a fixed moon sign, and I would say especially with Scorpio, because it is a water sign as well, will believe that they have the right to expect constancy from the other person, because they will tend to give that constancy. This is one of the reasons why Leo is considered a loyal sign, is because Leo is a fixed sign. So all of the fixed signs, they do tend to demonstrate consistency in all areas of their life. And that's cool. But sometimes that consistency is because they don't like change. It isn't necessarily like in relationships. I don't think it's always 100% of the time because they are loyal. It's because they would rather stay with, I was going to say the devil that they know, then go off and find somebody else. Even if they're, so when I say the devil they know, I mean a relationship that is struggling, maybe more acceptable than just starting over from scratch and going into unknown territory. One of the greatest challenges that you face and that you have to work with is being able to put yourself into another person's shoes emotionally and be able to appreciate another person's emotional stance. You're certainly capable of perceiving this, but whether or not you respect it is a different story. That's the problem, is that you can be very obstinate about your feelings being, like my way or the highway about a situation, and not being willing to see that someone else has the right to feel differently. But let's talk about some good things, because I do tend to, focus on what the challenges are. The great thing about this combination is, again, there are going to be those of you where it's a trine from your moon to Venus, and this indicates the ability to freely give and receive love. But I would say that it's not a done deal that it wouldn't be that way if you didn't have that combination. I mean, that aspect, that trine. Just by virtue of both of these placements being in water. You're a very sensitive person, which means that you can be very sensitive to your beloved. You can be very sentimental. With Venus in Cancer. You're great at gift giving because you can really tune into the essence of another person, and not that it's important to give gifts, but there's something more to it than that. It's really what I feel gifts are all about, which is honoring somebody else and doing so with a material token of what that person represents to you. So it might be something that you both shared that reminded you of them, and you can be very caring about their well-being. You can be a great support system for them. I think this combination, if we talk about like money, because the moon can be the need for emotional security, and Venus can be how, a person's attitude towards money. I feel like this is a rather conservative combination. I don't see this combination as blowing money. So you could probably look at other things that are going on in the chart with the second house in particular. There might be things that counter that, but in general, this is going to be very much about saving money, and maybe with the moon in Scorpio, investments, and in terms of marriage, I think that you are more acclimated to traditional marriage than to live together with that person. Also, I feel like this is a very family-oriented combination. So chances are, if you get with someone, you're going to want to have a family. Now, obviously, if you are, maybe you never married when you were younger, and you marry for the first time when you're 50, or if you are married, divorced, and now you are falling in love again, It might not be that you want children, but there might be some other thing. Maybe you share creativity or spiritual pursuits, but something that you can create as a couple, because there is that element of nurturing with this combination of planets, and that can be something that you feel very strongly and maybe you want to share with the other person. So, yeah, I think I've gone on long enough, and I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.